The hallowed halls of the Daniel Patrick Moynihan Courthouse in Lower Manhattan, a structure usually echoing with the measured cadence of legal proceedings, had become a crucible of raw emotion and palpable tension. The high-stakes federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, a man who had once bestrode the entertainment industry like a colossus, was reaching a fever pitch. For days, the carefully constructed edifice of his public persona, built on decades of musical innovation and entrepreneurial swagger, had been chipped away by a relentless tide of damning allegations. Now, on this particular day in May 2025, the carefully maintained composure of the hip-hop mogul, the business titan who had seamlessly navigated the treacherous currents of fame and fortune, appeared to finally buckle under the immense weight of the accusations leveled against him. The courtroom, a stark arena where truth and consequence collided, held its breath. The hushed whispers of legal teams huddled in tense consultations, the frantic scribbling of reporters eager to capture every nuance, and the unwavering gazes of the jury, their faces etched with the solemnity of their duty, all contributed to an atmosphere thick with anticipation. Diddy, a figure accustomed to commanding attention with an almost regal bearing, sat hunched at the defense table, his usual flamboyant attire replaced by a suit that seemed to swallow his once expansive frame. His hands, often seen gesticulating with charismatic energy during pronouncements of his latest ventures, were now clasped tightly together, a silent testament to the immense pressure that bore down upon him. Throughout the initial days of the trial, as the prosecution methodically presented their case, a grim mosaic of alleged violence, blackmail, and decades of purported coercion, Diddy had maintained a stoic, almost impenetrable silence. But as the harrowing details of the alleged criminal enterprise, a clandestine network of wild, drug-fueled sex parties, chillingly referred to as freak-offs, began to emerge from the testimonies, a subtle but significant shift had occurred. The confident swagger that had long defined him began to erode, replaced by a palpable tension that radiated from his very being. Then, during a particularly intense and emotionally charged session, as the prosecution delved deeper into the graphic specifics of alleged violence, the insidious mechanisms of blackmail, and the sheer duration of the purported decades-long coercion, something within the carefully guarded psyche of Sean Combs appeared to finally fracture. Witnesses, their accounts swiftly disseminated through the insatiable channels of social media and traditional news outlets, described a visceral and undeniably human display of emotion. Tears, they recounted, began to stream down Diddy's face, his carefully constructed wall of denial seemingly crumbling under the sheer weight of the accumulating accusations. And then, in a moment that hung heavy in the stunned silence of the courtroom, came the statement, a raw and desperate utterance that reverberated through the tense atmosphere. "I am not the only one responsible." The profound implications of those 5 simple words reverberated through the courtroom, like a shockwave, igniting a firestorm of immediate speculation and prompting a collective intake of breath from everyone present. What precisely did he mean? Who else in the vast and intricately interconnected world of hip-hop royalty and Hollywood's power elite did Diddy believe shared the culpability for the alleged criminal enterprise that the formidable forces of the federal government claimed he had orchestrated and maintained for over 2 decades? The courtroom, and indeed the world beyond its walls, held its collective breath, waiting with bated anticipation for further clarification, for the potential unraveling of deeply buried secrets that could implicate some of the biggest and most influential names in the entertainment industry, sending shockwaves far beyond the confines of this singular trial. To truly grasp the potential significance and far-reaching consequences of this pivotal moment, it was crucial to understand the immense legal jeopardy that Sean Combs now faced. The federal indictment, a meticulously crafted document forged by prosecutors who had reportedly dedicated over a year and a half to the painstaking construction of their case, painted a damning portrait of a man who allegedly operated with a chilling sense of impunity, leveraging his considerable wealth, pervasive influence, and extensive connections to systematically exploit a string of vulnerable individuals, both male and female, within the shadows of a hidden world of alleged depravity and control. The litany of charges, racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and the interstate transportation of individuals for the purposes of prostitution, carried the very real potential for decades behind bars. A stark and terrifying prospect for a man who had long accustomed himself to a life of unparalleled luxury, unchecked power, and absolute control over his carefully curated domain. The prosecution, demonstrating a clear and unwavering resolve, had wasted no time in presenting what many seasoned legal observers and court reporters described as a remarkably formidable and compelling case. Their initial witnesses included a hotel security guard, a seemingly ordinary individual thrust into the extraordinary circumstances of the unfolding scandal, who chillingly recounted the immediate aftermath of the now infamous 2016 assault on Diddy's then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, a brutal act captured on damning and undeniable surveillance footage that had already seared itself into the public consciousness. The guard's stark testimony, alleging that Diddy had attempted to silence him with a hastily offered bag of cash, directly and powerfully supported the prosecution's core narrative of a man who routinely leveraged his considerable wealth to conceal his alleged transgressions and evade accountability for his actions. Even more explosive and undeniably impactful was the unsettling testimony of Daniel Phillips, a man who managed male strippers and whose graphic account sent palpable shockwaves through the hushed courtroom, reportedly causing Diddy's own twin daughters, visibly distressed by the disturbing nature of the revelations, to abruptly and tearfully leave the proceedings. Phillips testified in disturbingly explicit detail about an alleged 2013 encounter, a clandestine arrangement whereby Diddy purportedly paid him thousands of dollars to engage in sexual acts with Cassie Ventura within the confines of a New York City hotel room, all while Diddy himself allegedly observed from an adjacent, unseen space. Phillips's unsettling account, complete with specific details of Cassie's attire, a vivid red lingerie and a striking red wig, and Diddy's alleged hidden presence, directly and chillingly corroborated the prosecution's central claims regarding the orchestrated and fundamentally non-consensual nature of the so-called freak-offs, stripping away any lingering pretense of mutual agreement. Phillips further testified to witnessing Diddy physically assault Cassie within their shared residence, stating that he had harbored genuine fears for his own personal safety, but had eventually developed a complex and perhaps ultimately tragic rapport with the alleged victim. Diddy's sudden and emotional outburst in the sterile confines of the courtroom was particularly noteworthy and potentially strategically significant, given his earlier, highly publicized decision to reportedly decline a plea deal offered by the prosecution, a move that seasoned legal experts had widely interpreted as a clear and unequivocal sign of his unwavering intent to vigorously fight the serious and potentially life-altering charges that loomed over him. However, his tearful declaration of shared responsibility, delivered with a raw vulnerability that stood in stark contrast to his usual carefully constructed bravado, suggested a potential and perhaps even desperate shift in his overall legal strategy. A possible dawning realization that a steadfast and absolute blanket denial of all wrongdoing might ultimately prove unsustainable in the face of the seemingly overwhelming and continuously accumulating weight of the prosecution's evidence, particularly with the looming and potentially devastating specter of the guest list from his infamous freak-offs about to be unveiled to the jury and the world.